We did a podcast and you recorded it, and I
Uh-huh.
don't remember anything about it because they just go past like clouds in my world. And but I was reading, your bio thing, the one paragraph, and then the longer thing, and then I looked at all of your, you know, podcasts, all 150 of them, just the little thumbnails of them. And I thought, boy, this guy gets excited about this stuff. Sort of histrionic and stuff, theatrical. So I thought, I'm a uh, both a researcher and a therapist, and yeah, theater doesn't have a lot of play in being either of those things. So there's a difference there. So to introduce you, Michael Waite, living in Japan, teaching English to aspiring Japanese people, I guess. And it says you studied philosophy at UC Berkeley. When were you at UC Berkeley? Because I was there for a year in '78.
I graduated in 2010, so yeah, a few years prior to that.
Explain yourself. Go
Explain
ahead.
myself, man, that's like the biggest question, right? Which part do you want to know? Uh,
I guess I want to know the part that's behind where you're moving now, as opposed to some of the things that you let go of.
yeah, well, I think the philosophy part is I tried to let go of it, but it kind of chased me back, I guess, because you get tired of, being trapped in your head and being overly rational, logical, and all of that. It's sort of what we talked about in the previous podcast on my show too. But yeah, so I studied philosophy. I was really super into it. The way I'm into this podcast now too. Um, but I got tired of all the thinking, and I wanted to experience what it was like to be in my body and be in the world and just do normal people things. So I went off to. I didn't have to go off to Asia, but for some reason I did. Went to Korea for a year, taught English there, and then I came to Japan. This is sort of the peak of my alcohol party, women chasing days too. So it was all kind of a blur, and I ended up in Japan after one drunken night in Korea. Um, and
God, you can
then
do that. You can do that things in those countries. They seem from the outside to be so well adjusted,
they
those
are
cultures.
they are on the outside. There's this image of, you know, Japan and Taiwan and even Korea as being like really orderly and structured, and they are on the outside. But once you get into it, it's a mess. It's just as big of a mess as anywhere else. Yeah. So I don't know. I just enjoyed my the remainder of my youth, I guess my 20s, just kind of traveling and hanging out and doing normal people things. But then yeah, I started missing the thinking and the studying and all that. So I think when my mom died a few years ago, and then when my brother went homeless at the same time because my dad kicked him out, he didn't want to deal with that or whatever. I don't blame him. I don't know. Something just emerged out of me, this podcast. But then even with this podcast, I think I started off in sort of this, like, I'm trying to understand things and I go down the science path and like pretending like I actually could understand things. And then the longer I did it, I would start to get almost like annoyed by some of these trending mental health topics. And now I'm almost like trying to, like in the way I got tired of philosophy, maybe now I'm getting tired of all this mental health stuff, or at least in the traditional sense. And I want to start to explore other topics. And so maybe I'm a little bit lost now in some way, but I think I'm going back to philosophy. I'm getting closer to philosophical discussions rather than uh, just these neuroscience ones or whatever, because I guess I'm a philosopher deep down inside.
What do you hope to either find as a conclusion or as a tool, um, clarity, direction, answers, a dialogue, a refining of your speech and thought? And are you concerned with connecting with other people, or are you heading off toward your own summit here?
I mean, it's a blend of both, right? I like connecting with other people. We all do, but then there's other pulling me away from other people. So it's just that's kind of back and forth. And even with the podcast, I started off solo, and then other people kind of came into it. But that was very, I think, healing or beneficial for me because I was almost too much off my own little cave. And now I guess I got to uh, learn how to talk to people and listen
Hmm.
and listen better, I guess. I'm not quite there. Slightly slow down my speech and stuff. So in general, like I don't know, just feeling more calm and peaceful and stuff like that, and happy with normal people things. I think that came out of these conversations, and then um, it affected my relationships in the real world too, I think. But yeah, I know I do like working alone and just going off in my own mad mind or whatever. Where is it going? Um, I don't know. A blend of both. It always is a blend of both. I like both, but deep down, I traditionally I've been more of a loner kind of solo thinker. But I'm trying to branch out into working with other people and so doing conversations and interviews and stuff like this and what we did. So and I
What
talk,
other things?
huh?
Well, go ahead. And you talked. Go ahead.
I do talk a lot, yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah. This is I gotta get over talking too much. That's like something I want to stop talking so much.
Well, I think it has to do with tempo and rhythm. So I was going to ask you, what connection do you have to tempo, rhythm, music, things that have continuity without content? They have structure without content, like music has. It sort of emerges only from its pattern as opposed to its words. I mean, you can't take music apart into notes and analyze it the way you can take dialogues apart into words and analyze it. So my question is, what are you doing, or do you even care, to modulate your frequencies and rhythms?
Yeah. So you're saying like by getting more music into my life, I might improve my own life and
I'm saying it's not even music. I'm saying it's about, to take it somewhat technically, brain rhythms. If you want to adjust your brain rhythms, think of it like music in a general sense, that it's got voices and it's got patterns and harmonies. I mean, this is very imaginative, but it's useful. And that if you want to slow down, this is actually interesting. People say that the reason you don't remember a lot of your childhood is because your brain frequencies were different then, and you stored memories in a different way that you no longer access. So that if you slow your brain down, you can access, you can get the gears to work again at a rhythm that was different. Because people don't recognize their change in rhythm happens so slowly. And it develops, it grows like, the tendrils of a tree. And before you know it, it's like a strangler fig, and that's who you are. You don't even remember the trunk that you surrounded when you were younger. So the idea I'm positing is that by changing your frequencies intentionally, even though you don't know what you're doing, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, you're moving into coherence with times when you were different or could be different. And I'm just thinking music or rhythm, it could be anything. It can be dance, it can be movement, it can be writing, it can be a lot of things. It can be your circadian rhythms, can move the whole package into a different state so that you don't have to think so much, becomes more of a coordinated pieces working together. But you do have to have some intention. I mean, we do have, as humans, the ability to have intention. It's always questionable about how effective we are at using it. I mean, this is sort of what mental illness is. It's people who can't use the skills they have, and they're stuck in whatever mode they are, freaking out or panicked or depressed or something. So, just, like the other day, I went on a long hike really beyond my skill level and just bruised myself and came back exhausted and tired and sore. And it slowed me down. And the last few days I've been, what happens to me when I slow down is I don't know what to do. I'm such a busy thinker, doer that when I have to slow down, I'm like, feel like I'm off the tracks. But that can be a good thing. So that was my question. Do you have other uh, pastimes that require different rhythms?
Yeah. And I think it also goes to the idea of me maybe sometimes being unsure of what kind of rhythm do I want to be in? Of course, I don't want to be in this hyperdrive, like da 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 da, talk all the time and think all the time mode, but it is one of my favorite ones. And so maybe getting into the opposite one, like you said, like when you just are completely slowed down and doing nothing, it's a bit uncomfortable, but also possibly the most satisfying one too. Maybe because I'm missing it so much, who knows? So yeah, I do, yeah, enjoy going out to nature and light hikes and things like that. In terms of music, actually, this past year, a lot of my intros were me like kind of dinking around, making, kind of taking the content from the interview and turning it into a song. So I was like making music, and that was actually more fun than the podcast itself. I don't know if I'm good at it, but again, it's fun to do things you're not good at actually, because
Yes.
it doesn't even matter. You're just having fun, exploring, and um, what else? I do enjoy playing guitar, but I haven't played it in like a decade, so maybe this is all talk. I used to love it. Walking, I walk probably hours a day. I walk a lot. Uh, what else? I just like
Mhm.
studying. Studying is a lot my big thing, but that's sort of I think I got to go into the other direction more because I'm just spending too much time doing that. Comedy, watching comedy. I've tried stand up a couple of times. It's so hard, and I think you just got to keep doing it for it to, start to be pleasurable. But again, it's like doing something you suck at is I don't know, something funny about it for me, but also and just enjoyable and exciting too. Those are some things I do, but
Mhm. Well, let me think. Keep trying to think and nothing happens. So,
yeah,
um, well, I started being kind of very exploratory, exploration and adventure. And then I got into physics and it was a different mindset. And I still pursue it because, it's interesting and you got to question. The interesting thing about physics is some of the terms are meaningful and others are just abstractions. But it's very interesting if you can find some reality to the things that seemed like they were just abstract. That's how they discovered antimatter. They had a term that was negative and they didn't know what to do with it. So they called it antimatter. And it turned out to be accurate and it had a lot of consequences. So it is sort of interesting to do, but it's like a lot of these things, very social. It's very social. Science is very social. It creates a society, and there's certain ways to think and certain attitudes you can have, and certain things you can publish. So it becomes very frustrating dealing with people who are stuck or rigid and trying to be creative. It's the opposite of music. I mean, this is sort of the story of modern music and punk rock, where people decided to break tradition and do things that were not musical, but to insist that they were relevant. And they eventually became relevant. I don't think they became very musical, but whatever. And so then I got into this psychotherapy stuff, which I think it's ultimately where people end up. When you end of your life, you think about death and what you accomplished and the meaning of things. And that's psychological. And most people don't think about it or they don't have answers. And it's interesting to talk to people on that level and see how they communicate and act. It does I wouldn't say it slows you down, but it gives you pause, like what's on these people's minds? And then there's the question of doing better. Can you help them do better? What is better? Um, are these people, you and me, even capable of doing better? My answer is unless you know what it means, you're probably just gonna wander around blindly. So that
Yeah.
becomes the question. What does it mean to be better? And and like you said, it's sometimes fun to do things you're not good at. And I think that's important because it is important to address things that you can't be certain you know. I mean, those are the things that you don't know. And unless you are omniscient, there's a lot you don't know. So, in some sense, there's the expression follow the pain, although not everybody is pained by what they don't know, but, generally. And it doesn't it doesn't sell very well. People come to you, pay you money. They don't want to hear follow the pain. But in a sense, I have to sweeten it because their problem is their solution somewhere. The two are connected. And I do get very fed up with people who won't look at their own self-destructive behavior and they just want how to manipulate other people. So,
But it sounds like at least you have now a little bit better environment than you had back in that physics environment where you just could not control the you're full of a world of people who are really uncooperative, and now you meet these people, but you have a little bit more control over like being around slightly more flexible people.
well, that's definitely true. I think it's really important that you get out of toxic environments. You just can't prevail if you're surrounded by poison in people, in your obligations, in your relationships. And so it's sort of funny when you talk to people who want relationship counseling. The first thing that comes to mind is get out of this relationship. If it's causing you grief, change it. And if the other people in the relationship won't change, then leave it. But of course, they don't want to hear that either because they've invested in it and they've invested their time and money and personality. Then if they have kids, it's even more of an obligation. So I keep my mouth shut if I can. But then I do talk too much. Been thinking about this recently. The advice you get from sales is not to talk. Let the person tell you what they want, and then you just say yes, yes, yes. I'll give it to you, and they're off and running. But I don't really like that. If they come to me with a delusion and they need new resources, I feel compelled to tell them, and they don't want to hear it. They're invested in their problem. They want to smash their way through it. They want to know how to convert other people to their point of view. And it's a defeating process.
But
So I talk.
that goes back to your values you're talking about, how integrity, honesty, and courage, and yeah, there's some benefits to holding back and not sharing your ideas, but that's not really the kind of life that you want to live.
Yeah, so so here's my interview of you. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
I like that too, but I think it's also me catering to my own, I don't know if it's biological nature or my experience or whatever, but I'm not very good at lying. I kind of just let it all out, which has its benefits. You can be full of ideas. It could be entertaining at sometimes, but also maybe annoying at other times. But the people who like me really, really like me, and the ones who don't are just like, okay, they kind of just fade off, so it's fine. Enough people um, really, really like this kind of person, and I like it. But at the same time, it could be exhausting, and but it is what I am. But that's in terms of overall energy and kind of output of ideas and things. Uh, in terms of honesty, yeah, I don't know. I think I don't have a real choice. I like we did this little training at one of my. I joined a new university and we had to do this training, and they gave us two truths and a lie, and I'm like, God, I have to think of a lie. why do I have to think about a life about myself? And even that was like challenging for me. So honesty is not an issue for me, but I also, even if it was, do you want to live a, you know, dishonest life, even if it is great and successful? It just that fakeness doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel satisfying to me. It's like that whole Robert Nozick experiment, where you can. I don't know if I'm getting it right, but this thought experiment of you can imagine being in this perfect virtual reality, but it's fake, or you could live in this real world where it's all messy and all messed up. Which would you choose? And I think a lot of people choose the reality over perfection and happiness and stuff. Um, so yeah, there's that one. Integrity. I mean, they're all kind of three sides of the same coin, right? But yeah, I'm for it. I don't know. Uh, I was gonna ramble trying to find an answer or explaining why, but I think for me, it's just uh, it's easy. It's easy for me. It's actually harder for me to do the other side, which just makes me less likely probably to make money and make sales and I don't know, do some of these things. But I guess the trade-off is like I'm feeling like this is me. I'm always me. Um, Sometimes I'm not as much because you're forced into these fake roles in certain jobs and things. But I think it's pretty minimal for me. But then also because I'm not able to kind of turn into a different character or shut my mouth and stuff as much. Maybe I might be shooting myself in the foot in terms of on a monetary opportunities or whatever. But then again, like, do I want to go down that world? Do I want to work in that company? I don't know. Part of me does. I want to feel like I belong and I'm accepted by the powerful people. But again, like they also gross me out. So I don't know.
Do you think you're autistic? Have you ever thought of that? I'm not saying you are, but I've
Oh,
been
thank you. That's the
accused of
best
it.
compliment. Possibly. I don't know. I honestly I think a lot of people are somewhere on the spectrum.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I just wanted to add, when I was in physics, um, the aphorism people would refer to was get your passport and then you can travel, which meant, keep your nose clean, your head down, and do what you're told, and then you'll be certified and you can, you know, open your mouth. And I think this sort of contradicts what you were saying, that a lot of people buy into that. Or I saw, but of course, this is physics, right? So it was very rigid and very structured and very hierarchical. And the people who go into that tend to be rigid, structured, and hierarchical. So they bought into that idea. And it's a failed idea in the sense that if you're inclined to close your mind to begin with, and then you just spend 4 years perfecting the closed mind, when they give you your passport, you don't travel. You just stay within the box that you've built and all its many levels. You have projects that are approved, you have grants that are funded, you have departments that hire you, and you stay within these boxes because that's what you bought into. So that a lot of people in that environment choose the material over the ineffable, playful, creative, um, nonconformist view. Those people, anyway. And like you say, I'm glad I got away from them. And when you look back at those boxes, you see how many broken corners and bad constructed ideas that they're based on. I mean, this
Yeah.
is science. It's full of, like I say, everything's going to be bullshit in 100 years. So why believe it now? It's only because it gives you a ladder to climb, but it ultimately leads to a swamp of confusion. So what I'm going to say, I also wanted to say is like, why don't you? So you're teaching English. Now there's a structured and fundamentally, uh,
Oh, I don't enjoy it.
so why don't you teach Western culture to Eastern-minded people or make it more insane? Why don't you teach Western insanity to sane Eastern-minded? You could break open the nut, I think,
Oh
if
yeah.
you could do that.
Oh, and that would be the biggest key to why I imagine my happiness because this job is this teaching thing is quite a pain for many reasons. So I would love to do something like that. And what's stopping me, I guess, is a question. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the question. What is, because you know what you'd have to do, and I did this too, it's very dispiriting. You have to present yourself to people who don't believe your idea over and over again. And I've been shot down and humiliated and disrespected. And I think what you're looking for is a path through a jungle of thorns, of disrespect, and uh, you're looking for somebody who will endorse or support or encourage you. You're looking for a mentor, if you might put it that way, in the expression of a new idea. And of all the people that I've encountered in my history, it's only the handful of mentors that um, enliven and encourage me, and all the hundredfold low life experts I'm just happy to forget about. They weren't helpful. Even
Yeah.
the ones that thought they were, but they were teaching me boxes and not liberation.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's what you'd have to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because even like we are talking about the physics department being this world of people who are all rigid and following the rules. Japan as a culture is that. So there's moments in my time here, long periods where I'd be like, "Get me out of this box," because it's a world full of boxes and rule followers, and people like you are quite rare here. Um, but I guess it's fine because they're unlike those physics professors. They were not like in your face. They're just in the background doing their thing. But when it comes to like creating some kind of new business or a way of teaching or something, maybe there's that worry too of like, will they even allow me to create something outside of the structure? It's definitely not normal here, but I guess it's if you could do it. I don't know, maybe you could, but there is that cultural kind of blockiness and rule basedness of things here, which I don't enjoy, but it does create safety and kind of overall, I don't know, comfort and uh, predictability and stuff. So as a backlay of the world I'm in, maybe it's not so bad. I can escape it into my home and stuff. But again, it's a bit lonely to be in a world that's like so rigid. Uh,
But here's what you could do. You could disguise it. And if you disguised it as like modern Westerns, like modern Western philosophy, there are a few modern Western philosophers who would agree with you. Like I like the philosopher Paul Feyerabend because he was basically a dramatist. And I was lucky enough to spend an afternoon with him in Berkeley. And you could sort of angle that into a academically respectable elevator pitch in the context of changing culture and the disparity of the cultural structure and the role of creativity. I mean, I think of that Japanese artist, I think she's Japanese, who just did polka dots. She just did polka dots. She was sort of humiliated until she finally became an international star, just made polka dots. And it was strange because ultimately it was not a very expressive mode, polka dots. And you can see, oh, people could appreciate it because it didn't offend anyone. It's just polka dots. That's all she ever did was polka dots. And she was kind of nuts. But you'd have to like disguise it as something innocuous so that people who are blinded could say, oh, yes, it's just the modern philosophy of, whatever.
yeah,
And then if you did that, I think you would find people coming out of the woodwork who would take it for what it really was in
yeah,
your secret meetings, like Dead Poets Society, in some cave somewhere. It would be a dual thing, but isn't that's what all creative stuff is? It starts out in a somewhat protected environment, hopefully, and doesn't get too much shit that might hold it down. And you know what you'd be doing, I think, in my imagination, is just seeding other people's ideas with your, incessant productive mind and in disguising yourself in a corduroy suit with suede elbow patches or whatever you're
Yeah, yeah. What they
supposed to
want to
get.
see, and they do have these big frustrations here, and need to connect with the West, or whatever you want to call it, English speaking world. I mean, they cannot one speak English, but even if they could, even these guys who can't speak English, they have such a problem. They don't know how to talk to people, in America. So they'll hire people. I had this job like this for a couple of years, or sort of this mediary between, these Japanese guys and, you know, people in the U.S. to, because they just couldn't communicate. They cannot understand how we think. It's like how we communicate because it's just like so opposite. So maybe this can be like you could package it in that way, and then by feeding them all these little philosophies and things, they can like, oh, I see how I can get into the head of an American finally.
Yeah, I don't think I could get into the head of I don't even want to say it's very
I don't think you
biased.
want to. You don't want to get in the head of a Japanese guy. No offense, but it's not you at all.
Maybe, but it's in our world, there are a lot of I don't I don't like calling them Japanese guys because it's not limited to Japan.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Certainly
yeah, not at all.
Korea, China, Southeast Asia, they've all got some similarities. I mean, I spent some time in Mongolia and I was happily surprised that they were not. They did, their language is not related, and their culture is in fact not related, and their physiology, they're tall, big people rather than small people, and they do have the narrow Asian eyes, but they didn't have the mentality that I'd expected to see in Asia, and a lot of interesting things. Why am I saying that? Um, well, you said I wouldn't want to get into it. Well, I'm saying, well, I don't really know what it is, but if there is an it there, and it is a big presence in the world, then it has the potential to expand. And I live in Western Canada, and there's a lot of Asians here. And I think it's very funny because Canada is very segregated. Not, it's all like separate but equal, but it's definitely separate. I never see, guys in turbans unless I go to, fast food restaurants. They don't shop in the same, or Walmart. Well, I like Walmart because it's got everybody goes to Walmart. Um, and but they're not in my community. They're not in my neighborhood. I don't see them on the street. They live in separate places. But over time, they do and can and will. But this isn't just Japanese. There's a lot of Indians and Chinese. So I don't know what'll happen, but I would like to know. I would like to have that. I don't want to call it integration because it sounds like dilution, but I would like to have some insight and communication.
Yeah. It's like a little Asian psychedelic. You get to experience what it's like, and then afterwards you're like, oh, I know what it's like. As long as you don't get trapped into their head, I think it's a positive experience of, experiencing or knowing what it's like to be different people. But then as long as you're flexible to kind of pop back into your own head or whatever afterwards, yeah, it'd be very useful, and probably everyone would be happier if we could do more of that kind of
Well, this is
head
like basic
switching.
mental health stuff, right? Being able to be flexible. Mental health, at least the mental health that I do, mostly deals with people who are stuck on an attitude or approach or their own personality. Um, and they lack, I'm just, this is my prejudice. They lack those things that I tell people they need. They lack a certain amount of courage. They lack a certain amount of um, whatever the other things were, honesty. And I mean, these get vague, right? Because you can tell the truth but not mean it, or you can tell the factual truth but not the real truth.
Yeah.
This is why people can be violent. They have an excuse. They have a reason. You can invent reasons. People don't understand that reasons follow feelings. They think that reasons are first, but reasons are second. Reasons first you make a decision and then you find a reason to substantiate it. And mental health means getting out of that. It means having flexibility to manage your own feelings. But I'm talking too much.
No,
So,
no, no. It's no, I like when you talk because it just sparks my brain. So you're just lighting little fires around in my brain. Good fires. Um, yeah, but it's earlier I said, oh, I'm living honestly and authentically. Now it makes me think, listening to you talk, maybe not. With my words and my thinking, I release the things out of my head. But that's sort of the cheap, easy level of honesty. When it comes to action, I'm teaching English. I just said I hate it and it doesn't fit me and it's too easy, etc. Uh, but I still do it. So like it's this fear of being honest with yourself and going down the paths that taking the actions, the actual
mhm.
moving your body and doing things. That kind of honesty seems a bit more powerful and also exciting for me. But it's maybe something I'm still working on. So yeah, that reminds me. Yeah, you could be honest with your words, but maybe common sense. But let's start being a little bit more bold and risk taking and honest with our actions. Yeah. Hmm. But it's good to be reminded of that. But I don't know. You get scared because you're in comfortable little boxes. The boxes are comfortable,
Right.
with terms of work and everything else that you've set up for yourself. And to 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 get honest with your actions often involves jumping off that cliff, out of the box, and you're in this weird land for a temporary period of time. And I guess then you probably create a new little box. But yeah, I think I'd be excited at this point in my life to jump out of some of these boxes and just like trust that I will land somewhere.
If you were a stand-up comic in Japan, what could you, what themes could you bring up that would be both funny and threatening to the audience? Could you
Um,
think of the duel? Because that's kind of what comedy is. It's tension and relief at the same time. So
I'm
you,
sorry, so I was hard to come up with like a kind of little comedy skit on the spot. But no, they're too polite about everything, so they have um, they say what they're supposed to say about everything. So I think comedy would actually be pretty easy here because no one's really calling things out and saying what it really is. So you'd have to just find like uh, what people are actually feeling, uh, which is like pretty obvious sometimes. But they just won't say it. But again, you don't want to be annoying either. I don't know. Yeah, comedy is something I would sit down and kind of think about and write about. I don't think I could pop it out right now.
well, come
But
on, do it.
come
Make
on,
a fool of
still tell
yourself.
me something funny. People told you they say you're funny. Tell me something funny. It's like I'll go back to America and they'll say,
Well,
"Hey,
tell
say
me something offensive then. That's easier.
offensive." Well, they're quite racist, so you can just do kind of all kinds of like racist kind of things, like pretending and playing around like a different like a person, a Filipino or an Indian or American or whatever, and just get fully embodied into that character
Uh-huh.
and in an honest way. Like this is a, I mean, it is sort of racist, but I mean, it's funny. They would love that. They do like that. I'm sure they would. And then when I do this kind of thing, not that I'm well, maybe I do sometimes. In the safety of your own home, you're able to get away with like 10 times as much comedy or 100 times more than you could in the outside world because like there's just literally no rules. So I really enjoy doing comedy at home, with my girlfriend or whoever. But yeah, you can probably tone it down a little bit and do it in a safer way, but still risky way out there. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, just impersonations of people. I think that would be fun. But again, it's like kind of offensive. But again, also Japan's like not like the U.S. now. I mean, they're even though they do want to follow the rules, you know, they don't. All this political correctness stuff or whatever. Like you're supposed to say it like this. You can't say this. You can't do that. There's none of that really. So you're kind of free to I don't know, do inappropriate jokes and things. But I think that's fine with comedy because that's what it's. If we're supposed to, we're just thinking around. We're not serious about this. We're just trying to laugh. So, I don't mind. You know, I don't know. If you're a white guy acting like a Filipino dude or something, but it could be fun. I know some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you could use accents because I was just trying to read a book to my son last night and trying to hide. I spoke Portuguese for a little while, but I couldn't think of how to speak English with a Portuguese accent, which the book was demanding had a character who was Portuguese speaking English. And I didn't know how to do it. I could do it with French, but I couldn't remember how to do it with Portuguese. And since you have some familiarity, you could probably do it with certainly better than I could. I mean, I have no idea what a Filipino accent is, not a clue, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
and
But it's beyond accents. It's like the cool thing about traveling, especially if you've gone back to a place again and again, or even live somewhere, is you start to pick up on how they think and what they want, and there's certain trends of ways people behave, and then that's fun comedy for me. Is like is reenacting some of those weird situations, or they're sort of semi-imaginary, but semi based on reality of just these. Um, the ways people interact in funky little ways in other cultures and just kind of exaggerating it and like, taking it to a little further level and then just keep going with it. And that could be fun.
it
But
could be really.
you see funny things. People are funny. People are funny everywhere. Um, and you see it when you travel, like, what the God? Because it's the same character, just, doing the same thing in different situations. And sometimes it's not just one character, it's a whole culture doing certain things. And that's um, to find that, to notice it, or seem to notice it, and then kind of uh, play with it, in a comedic kind of sense. That could be satisfying for me. I don't think they'll enjoy like philosophy jokes and history jokes and like intellectual ones. So you gotta get down to more things that
Hmm.
people, more normal, basic, simple things, nothing intellectual. So, yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, if they could enjoy philosophy jokes and stuff, that could be fine. But I don't think there's much of an audience for it.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's anywhere. When I deal with clients, I'm often teasing them. I'm often challenging them and contradicting them. But I do that better with the stronger clients, the ones who are both more definitive in their attitudes and more uh, have greater latitude and strength in considering other attitudes. So I'm thinking of my two main clients now. One is a banker, a young man who was an athlete, attracted to money and success. And so I tease him, that his ideas are stupid and that his actions are counterproductive, which is exactly what he doesn't want them to be. He wants to always be right and effective. And gets him in trouble because it's a kind of it's a trap. It's a money trap. You get rewarded for doing more, being more adversarial, being more competitive, and more, giving of your time until you have no life left. So I contradict him, and as much as I can, because I understand that some of his problems are rooted in the way he thinks and how much sense he makes and how much money he makes. And another client is a mountaineer of a kind of poetic school where he's just enthusiastic about nature and he doesn't care about suffering and discomfort and always gets himself into nature endlessly. It's all he wants to do. And other people just can't keep up with him. They're attracted to his idealism and his enthusiasm, but when they try to join him, he just burns them out. He's inexhaustibly enthusiastic, and other people just get wet and cold and dreary and exhausted and sore and want to go home. So, and then he comes to me and says, "Oh, how come I'm so alone? And all these people say they like what I do and they want to join me, but they're unreliable and they peter out." And so I have to say, well, you got a different mindset. You're a different person. I mean, it's more than just East versus West. He's got some sort of visionary skill that satisfies his soul that other people want to, buy a house and have a family and settle down. And he is not interested in any of that. So what am I supposed to do? Just tell him to calm down and accept it and be more discerning and recognize that what people say isn't always what they mean. There's a level, they'll believe his enthusiasm up to a point and then they'll not call him back anymore. So that's not exactly humor, but if I can find a humorous way to say it, I will. But I mean, it's therapeutic. So you could say if, as a stand-up comic, there's a certain amount of therapy there. It's like, what do you really want? What would make you happy? Because if you're not happy, you're probably not going to think it's funny. If you're feeling threatened and miserable, it's not a compatible emotion with humor and levity.
It's not fun to watch a comedian who's like all stressed out and stuff. He's got to be all he's
Unless you're good at it, unless you
yeah.
could really, I mean, there are comedians who have made being pathetic funny, but I mean,
Oh
Woody Allen
yeah.
did that, right? That was kind of his thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so what's your cultural background? So you're probably got some Protestant or agnostic
Oh,
background.
yeah. I grew up Mormon.
Oh, Mormon. Oh
I got
God,
nine
there's got
brothers
to
and
be.
sisters.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
Grew up in Bakersfield, California. My mom and dad met at BYU, Idaho, no, Utah, the Provo, anyway, Mormon school. They wanted me to go there too. And then when I got into Berkeley, they were actually kind of like their kind of faces kind of sunk down. They
Yeah,
got
right.
more worried about
Uh,
me because oh no, we lost another one.
that's
Um,
right. That's right. And they did, in fact, didn't
they
they?
did, but I won. I mean that Berkeley saved me in so many ways, like just the world itself, and then the ideas and professors and stuff I interacted with. Um, Again, there's problems with that world as well, but going from conservative Bakersfield, California, and a Mormon family to that was like a breath of fresh air. But yeah, to answer the question, yeah, Mormon, and my grandpa was like hardcore Mormon. The whole lineage of these hardcore Mormons. That he was like the what do you call like a regional manager type thing. I guess that's a translation, but they called it stake president or something. So he was that's all they cared about. It's like just follow the rules, be a good Mormon boy, go on your mission, and it felt like that's all they really cared about. So that's a bit of a bummer, but whatever. You got brothers and sisters, you got the outside world. You can play basketball, you can read your books and catch frogs and lizards and I don't know, whatever you want to do. So that was a fun childhood, but also there's this backdrop of God, these Mormon overlords. Eventually, I got out of that.
Did your siblings get out of it, or are they good
Um,
Mormons?
one of my sisters is she did the whole she completed the package or whatever. She got married and went to the Mormon school, and so I think 1 out of 10 is a success. My youngest brother's only 18, I believe. So I think he's starting. Oh, we were swimming in the pool. I thought he was one of them. He was part of the clan or whatever. But we were swimming in the pool last time I went back, and he was kind of, sharing his questions about the church, thinking, I don't know, something's funky about this stuff. And when I talk to them at church about it, they don't like it, and I don't know. So I'm like, okay, so the gears are running in his head. I think it's not a very high success rate. It's probably sub 20%, 2 out of 10 maybe. Yeah.
2 out of 10 leaving or 2 out of 10 staying?
2 out of 10. I mean, full on believing, 1 or 2 out of 10. I'm guessing. Kind of just maybe on paper believing, like maybe going to church or they don't have an alternative. They haven't really thought through it yet. Because I mean, I'm not saying like I'm smarter because I studied philosophy, but you have time to sit down and kind of think about these things. And maybe they didn't do that as much yet, so they're kind of in the middle ground. There's probably a few of those. But I think if you ask them, "Are you Mormon?" I guess I got to ask them. I haven't sat down and asked them. Um, but I imagine it's certainly less than 50%. Probably more like 20 or
Well,
30%.
that's interesting because Mormonism, went through this huge blossoming in, the early 20th century or whenever it moved
Yeah.
west and, took over Utah and I don't know, Southern California, but I guess Utah's the center of it. And from what you're saying, it sounds like it's peaked. I mean, you wouldn't know it from the money that they seem to collect, but that's kind of building on what they've already created.
Yeah, well, they've been collecting 10% tithing, a 10% tax on all these Mormons, basically. And if you don't pay, they start calling up and knocking on your door and stuff like that. collector agency, um, and they've been doing that for so long, and they've been investing that. They've got a big investment account, and they've got enough money now. They could just ride the brokerage account or whatever they've got is probably enough, and then they get more money coming in. So they're probably fine. They're already loaded. They're just gonna
But the
invest it.
culturally that works against you because you now you're conservative and you're not moving forward and you're not connected with the newest generation and the newest generation wants its own thing and you can fall out of maybe not financial prosperity, but you can fall out of cultural relevance with the new generations if you're too much old school. I mean, we see that that's sort of like the one of the rhythms of culture.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, then being too rigid, I think, scare away the children, and the children kind of go in the opposite direction. And also now they have access to, for a while they've had access to the internet and now AI and everything. It's not hard to, if you start having these questions you want to like my brother had in the pool, he can go onto the internet and kind of, oh, whoa, oh, I'm discovering more weird things about this church. Um, or you just
I think
don't even go down that road. But I mean, I'm sure yeah, just like you shouldn't be looking at porn, that you shouldn't be doing this or that. They tell you, yeah, you might take a little swig of beer, you might look at a little porn, you might go ask some questions on ChatGPT about well, why did Joseph Smith blah blah blah. And you're like, ooh, okay, hmm. So it's probably easier because of
well
access to
that
information.
I don't have a lot of faith in AI as a future guide, but it's a great guide to the past. It can you can ask a simple question and you get a big answer. And that I think is people don't appreciate that. They're all looking for the future and how's it going to guide our minds and how's it going to change the culture. AI is going to I just read a headline that said Melania thinks students should be taught by robots. And I thought, well, who the hell do you think has been teaching them all this time? Just robots, textbooks and 30-year-old dialogues. But with AI, it's going to be much broader. Now that kids are going to get 100 years of history, not just, the last slice of the textbook's perspective. And I think that's really what's going to change culture. People who start asking questions are going to get a lot better answers than you could. I mean, it used to take you an afternoon at the library to assemble a bunch of resources, but now you can get it in 10 seconds and you can just follow them. And it takes a certain amount of skill and patience to read through that stuff and put it together. But it's right there for the 2 to 5% of the people who will avail themselves of it. And the rest of the people, the other 97% of the population, yeah, AI will just take over their jobs or whatever because, the AI can do a mediocre job just like everyone else was doing it before. But the things that are changing, yeah. I have a son who's 15 and I keep trying to get him to do more and he doesn't want to. He just wants to play computer games. And at some point, because I've always been involved in education, at some point, kids get bored. And I watch them do these computer games and I think, how many times can you do that game? And he's telling me, oh, each time you log on, they change the order of things. It's a big fucking deal. That's not really interesting. But he's still, and at some point, kids get bored. And that's like the key. Then they open their minds and lo and behold, the other computer games aren't all that much interesting either. And then it's a big jump. Are you going to go follow your religion or someone else's religion or travel? Now, you traveled. Like you didn't say that played a big role, but
Oh, it certainly
God,
did. It did.
it's a. I mean, I moved to Canada
It
and I feel
does.
like I'm on the moon. You moved to Japan. I can't imagine how you even found an atmosphere to breathe, but you did.
Yeah. Well, the first year I couldn't really breathe, and I was planning my escape out. But then along the way, it's like a relationship. You kind of just kind of I kind of starting to like her. I think this is working. So I stayed, and then it's also looking at the alternatives. I guess I could have gone back to the U.S., but I jumped from Korea to Japan, and so that was sort of my reference. I was like, okay, well, let's go back to Korea because at least there people are more kind of outgoing and
Really?
social and stuff. And they're a bit more rigid here. But then I'd go back to Korea and I'd notice like the rudeness and the kind of selfishness in people, and that kind of shocked me a bit being in Japan for a year. So I was like, okay, fine. At least there's no, you know, douchebags and assholes and mean people here. At least people just mind their own business and they're generally nice to you, even if it is sort of fake. I was like, okay, I'll take this little act, the act of everyone being a good boy and good girl over, I don't know, just selfishness and stuff. Yeah, Korea was really fun, and it was really fun. And I
Did
do,
you learn to speak Korean?
yeah, I mean, like a 1 year level. So I mean,
Such a
uh,
different language.
yeah, but Korean and Japanese at least are grammatically quite identical. Almost
Really?
you can map so it's very easy to translate Japanese into Korean because
Oh, I
just
didn't hear that.
their overall way of thinking is although I highlight that yeah, there's a bit more maybe there's Chinese kind of fight for yourself kind of attitude in Korea than there's in Japan. I think Japan's separated itself even further from uh that kind of Chinese kind of thing. Um but yeah, in terms of language, it yeah, very you can map the grammar onto it quite similarly, and a lot of the words are very similar too because it goes again. These are both kind of countries. I haven't studied the history enough, but they go. It goes back to China, so the language, both languages, kind of ultimately started in China and they used the Chinese characters. And Korea eventually got rid of the Chinese characters like 500 years ago, and they got their current alphabet, the Hangul, which is very beautiful, amazing alphabet because there's only like 20 something characters and it's phonetic like Spanish, so you know how to pronounce it. And so you can learn how to read Korean, read and write Korean in a weekend probably if you're diligent.
No,
Japanese
man, you are
kept
good with languages. So you got
yeah,
to admit it.
I don't
It'll
know.
take me 2 years to do it. You can do it a
Maybe.
weekend.
But the Japanese is the other on the other level. They kept all the Chinese characters, but then they built their own side alphabets on the sides. They got like all the three alphabets and it's all these Chinese characters, and they jumbled it all together. But deep down, I mean, it's kind of a similar way of thinking. The grammar is similar. A lot of the words are uh, similar, different, but there's similarities you'll find. So in terms of like turning onto the Japanese brain channel, because it's a whole different way of thinking. Going from Japanese to Korean is not a big jump, but going from English to Japanese, you're like, what the hell? This is like a completely different world. So it wasn't as big of a jump, but maybe I could be wrong, and that just means I don't know Korean well enough. But it appears like that.
Wow, I think you should have a after school course on American thinking or, something for, because it would just be fascinating and you could put philosophy in it. So what are you going to do? We're running out of our hour time. What are you
Yeah.
going to
Well,
do?
yeah.
What are you going to do in your, well, and even if we have a half an hour more, we're still going to reach the
Yeah.
end of it. What are you going to
Uh,
do with the resources you have? I mean, I don't think you're going to become a politician. That would,
I don't think yeah, I think that's not
that,
happening.
so, but it's clear
Um,
that you would like to explore and have people, if not agree with you, at least accompany you or have people to talk to like you are talking to people. So are you just going to do more podcasts or what direction are you
no,
going to
no, no,
go?
no. The podcast I've been doing for a few years, and I'm gonna keep doing it. But I've learned and I've realized it's not it. It's one of it's been my number one thing for the past few years. My number one focus, and I want to drop it down to number two. I got to find or number three, and then find my no, new number one. Do you have any ideas? Just listening to me talking, because I'm still kind of uh,
Well,
I
I
have my
think
ideas, but I'm still kind of thinking.
well, the two things that come to mind are you're being social, having dialogues and communicating both with language and ideas and podcasts. And on the other hand, you're philosophical in a practical level, as in how people think or how we think or how the brain works. And we haven't even talked about shamanism, which is a kind of underlying, in my mind, attitude, kind of a nature-based, indigenous, intuitive way of thinking. So I'm just thinking, smash these two together, just like, an atom smasher and see what new particles come out. Smash together the the desire to communicate and the differences of thinking and do it in a way that you can slip it by. I mean, so yeah, you're probably not going to get paid for it at first, but maybe. I mean, like this is what I'm doing on Substack. I have a blog that I write every week, but unless you pay for it, you only get once a month, and you have to pay for it to get it every week. And sometimes that's a pain, but usually I have enough on my mind to say something that's half worth listening to. And in addition, I write books, and I've tried collating these blog posts, but they don't collate very well. They just seem like a bunch of thoughts. And writing a book takes a little more of an arc of development. So I've been writing books on education and therapy topics. Two books composed of blog posts, which are not my favorite books, but I feel, it gets it out there. There was useful material in there. And, I'm not sure you want to do that, but you've got language skills and writing is another thing.
No, I love writing. I think I started with writing, and that's why I did philosophy, and I was good at it too because it's more of a writing based activity, reading and writing. And then the speaking and stuff came. Maybe I don't know. It's here now. It's more of a focus, but I would love to write, and I would love to write books. But again, it's a long, hard process, and you've done it many times. So is it worth it? I guess I gotta just try and find out. But is it worth it?
It's hard to say, but it's because the question is, a book is just a thing that sits on the shelf if you're lucky. And it's a question of how do you market it? And the marketing becomes a whole thing, both risky and time consuming. And um, if you don't do it to some extent, um, you can't expect your work to be seen. It's a little like art. If you don't
Yeah.
get it in galleries, it just sits in your studio.
No, I know, because even with this podcast, I focus so much on just the act itself, and I don't really pursue the marketing, social media side of it much. And yeah, you guess you reap what you sow, but it's I don't know, it's
Well,
fine.
you
It's
have to do some
fine.
sewing. That's the point. It's not enough to just grow things in the dark. And perhaps we share a disdain for that. Uh, it's like one of the things that appealed to me about science was I didn't think you had to sell it. I thought it just was naturally supported. Anything that grew out of what the substrate was accepted, but it turns out not to be true. It's full of marketing and politics and power plays and a conservative bullshit, really. I look at what I've been taught, and I would say 40% of it is just deceptive and wrong. And it was taught in the best of intention and, convincingly and just bullshit. It's just
Mm.
deceptive and
Yeah, no,
misleading.
I'll get these emails from like some random I don't know, Indian dude or something on LinkedIn or wherever, and hey, you need to optimize this and that, and I'm gonna teach you out. And he'll show me an example. I'm like, ew, that's gross. I'm not gonna write that. I'm not gonna do that. And I guess I got to get over
Yeah.
that you factor of being. Well, I mean, for me, it's gross, but I guess for them, they're making money or something. But for me, like, can't. It just looks
Well,
ugly. It's not beautiful.
well, the joke in for authorship is that the way you make money is not by selling books to readers. You make money by selling bullshit to authors. And so I get a lot of these offers that say, "Oh, your book is great, and blah blah blah, and for this amount of money, I'll help you do this." And I tell these people, if you believe in my book, then you'll either do it for nothing or you'll pay me for a licensing fee. And if you're not going to do that, I don't want to hear from you again. And I never hear from any of them again. So I consider them all frauds. And I would say the same as a podcaster because it's sort of an up and coming thing, and there's going to be lots of people trying to make money off of their podcasts, or people make money off of podcasters. And if you have something that you feel is valuable, and you've produced 168 podcasts, and if you believe in them, then they are a resource. They are for you to sell, not for you to pay for, but for other people to pay you to be affiliated with you. So I wouldn't pay anyone anything unless you have the idea and you need help doing something and you look for somebody who can help you do it. I wouldn't accept any of these sales pitches that are being, you know, sent to you by strange people in strange places. Um,
What do you do when you get a potential guest reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, I want to be on your show"? I used to just say, I don't know, I used to say yes to everybody, but now I'm like, I can't. Half of it's I've learned is junk too. But I don't know. How do you approach that side of it?
they've got to have two things. They've got to have some insight, quality, and experience, and they've got to have some concordance with my work. So I've been trying to reach high risk athletes in order to tell them to stop being so high risk and start appreciating the skills they're learning as valuable human skills. And a lot of them don't want to hear that. They're just in the competitive mindset, trying to make new records and achieve new heights and become increasingly irrelevant to the rest of the world. And they don't want to hear the fact that being competitive and um, trying to break new records doesn't mean anything. Uh, but some do. Some are looking beyond the box. So I think this Friday, and in fact, just the other day, also, I talked to a person. The other day, I talked to a person who's a trainer, and I was saying, I think you're too linear, and that most important things in life are not so linear, so that a program is often not appropriate for achieving new ideas. And the guy I'm talking to on Friday is a very competitive sort of ultra marathon guy who has a podcast. And I'm going to take the same attitude. But to answer your question, these are people who have some experience and some similarity with my interest. Um, if they offered to talk to me and didn't have both of those things, I would say no. And I present myself to podcasters on the supposition that we have those things. And I get a little, what, I don't know, 50% rejection. Um, and I think those people, in a sense, would have been a waste of time because they seem to have some experience and share a certain interest, but they don't recognize that I have anything to contribute. So they probably aren't worth talking to. I mean, I'm offended at first, but then I say, well, they've exposed their preference, so
Yeah. Well,
I
these are the
should.
people also who are just completely focused on the numbers or overly focused on the numbers. And then if the numbers don't match, they don't even give you a chance. They're like, okay, you're not going to make me money. You don't have enough downloads or whatever. I don't know. And it's like, ew, like, why are you even on this podcast if it's just about numbers? It's boring. What are you going to talk about? But yeah, because they talk
Well,
about
it's their
something.
mindset. It's the box they're in. It's the competition they're, why does somebody take up a sport? I mean, think of any sport. A competitive sport, a sport like ski. Why? What appeals to somebody about trying to break a record? Like, it's going to have to do with your body, basically. You're either going to have the body type or it's not going to happen. And it's like seduction. How many people can you have sex with? Like, that might be appealing if you're 16, but you know, at some point, like in your 20s or 30s, you realize that this is going nowhere. There's absolutely nothing here. You're just gonna, it's just garbage. It's like blowing your nose in a tissue and trying to collect all the tissues. Like, what,
Well, I'm very honored that you invited me onto your podcast. That's like always like a big compliment, especially after we had a conversation already. So you got a glimpse of how I am or who I am, and you weren't repelled or you were interested in talking more. So that's like a big compliment for me. And this is a fun conversation. I enjoyed it, and yeah, just thank you for inviting me into your little
Into
space.
my life. Yes. Well, I wonder, I think, and cannot conclude or cannot resolve how our conversation would help other people. I don't know. But then that's a kind of a third leg to the whole thing. Like I say, we've got to have, this is my criteria. We have to have both some experience and insight, and then we have to have a common focus on which we can share it. And then the third leg is how could somebody listening to it get something out of it? And I'm not even sure that's a valid third leg because that's kind of presumptive. Like, what do they need? What do I have to offer them? And you learn, as I mentioned, as a therapist, often the less talking you do, the more your client moves. It's counterintuitive. You know, what they need is what you know, but they don't want to hear it. So they need to like reorganize their own thought and you just let them do it. And you sort of encourage them to say stuff and then you tell them that that's wrong or it's stupid or it's right and it's encourage. I don't know. um
Yeah, and sometimes the conversation or the interview doesn't have to be completely structured and for example, I used to map it all out and have like a trajectory of where I thought I would go and had like a little path. And eventually I kind of started to throw that map away or not even create them anymore. And there's this fear of like, oh, it's going to be like a mess. And like, there's no, how can I put a title on this thing or what do we talk about? But you listen to it again and you're like, wait, actually there was sort of this sort of recurring themes and this sort of coherence to it, like you said about music, you know. So I don't know. Again, in this case today, yeah, we're kind of focusing on my life and me kind of figuring out where to go and what to do and other things too. But we all face these same questions for ourselves, and trying to figure ourselves out and where we came from and where we're going next. And so I think it's still useful for people to listen to conversations like this and to kind of ask themselves the same questions that we're asking each other.
how are you going to break out of your box?
I know, I gotta break out this box. Um, I guess you just gotta do something uh scary. Do something do the scariest thing. What would that be? You gotta stop thinking about money too, because money holds you back. You're like, oh well, I need money, so I'm gonna do this, and you don't want to lose the money, like quitting jobs or reducing your hours, etc. So I gotta just let go of thinking about money, perhaps that could help. Uh, Two is stop podcasting so much because it's eating up all my time. I like doing it, but it's eating up so much time. So I got to reduce the number of um, episodes I release or something. Yeah, the number of interviews I do. I enjoy it, but again, it's not like blowing your tissue, counting the blown tissues you did. Because I'm not counting it, but I'm blowing my nose too much, and maybe I got to start doing other things too. Um, so yeah, it's got to meditate and figure it out. Like I've been working on this little VR biometric thingy where it's like tracking your uh, heart rate and HRV and all these things and putting it into like some weird trippy VR thing. But I don't know. I question that sometimes too. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? Do I want to be like entrepreneur guy? Do I even like this? Do I like even like VR? I kind of like reality. I don't know. So I gotta get sure on that. But I could continue that little project. Um, I call it Sensapien. I like the name Sensapien. So I like doing that thing. But it's again, it's a lot of freaking work. And is it where my heart is? I gotta figure that out. Comedy would just writing comedy or doing comedy would probably be the purest bliss for me. If I can like snap my fingers and live in any kind of world, I think, yeah, doing comedy, whether it's writing or acting or stand up, whether I'm good at it or not, it doesn't matter. I enjoy that probably more than anything else. So, but again, it's like you don't really see money coming from that anytime soon. So, again, I guess got to let go of the money and just jump into what brings me, this pure joy and laughter. Um, but again, you do need to think about the money too. So that's sort of the pickle you're in. Or do you? Maybe I do have enough money. I don't know. It always feels like you don't. What would you recommend? What do you do when it comes to like
I would say give yourself some free time. Make yourself some free time. So cut back on whatever it is that's taking up your time so that there's some time, some regular, reliable amount of time that's free.
that's step one. So less teaching, less podcast. Still will teach, still will do podcast, but just less and then divert those resources, that time and energy to something else.
And that's the second question. What else? And I think the answer is don't worry about it. Just have, let it kind of fracture in from your life. Let that free time be filled with is organically grows rather than your strategy and your,
Yeah.
entrepreneurial.
Yeah. It just
You
it
just
doesn't feel right. Yeah. If you're
you-
forcing
you're
something
already
into the
doing all
world.
that.
Yeah.
So and this is what like I tell my clients. I was like, the banker. I said, what do you like to do that you don't feel you have to be good at? And he said, well, painting. I'm not good at that. And I said, okay, give yourself some time every day. Go somewhere where no one can see you and paint and just throw them away. And another client, he played guitar, but he also, like you, hasn't played it much and so forth. And he likes to sit in his garden. So I said, all right, make a certain amount of time each day to take your guitar and go sit in your garden and just sit in your garden with your guitar and nothing else. Nobody to bother you, nothing to do. If your mind runs, just let it run, but hold the guitar and look at the guitar, and maybe something will happen. And this is sort of like mindfulness, right? This is sort of, Asian Buddhist bullshit. But when it's done properly, it's a different thing. When Westerners do mindfulness, it's not the same as when Buddhists do mindfulness. They got a whole different cosmology. So what a Westerner needs to do is empty his mind at the same time that it's running. It's like flushing a toilet. Just keep flushing it. Just let it run until it runs clear. So that's what I'd say. Give yourself time and don't worry about filling it. And then eventually you'll die and then it'll all be over. So it'll be fine.
No, that feels right. And maybe how I fill my time is not something that's like, it's not about career. It's I start spending more time with certain people, or I start just enjoying consuming certain things. I don't want to get locked into addicted addiction to consumption, on Netflix or whatever. But yeah, maybe you just start doing simpler things, and maybe it's fine just to sit in your garden or play your guitar that doesn't make money. And uh, but I imagine from that, just because I know how I am, there's this is like energy that's gonna is creative energy. Something will come out of it, and if it doesn't, it's fine. But I think that's sort of what you just now said kind of feels right to me. Like, oh, yeah, just create this space, create this time, and let it go. Like, see what emerges.
You have to realize that the compulsion that money plays is not just about money, it's about productivity, being productive, being rewarded, being um, important, consequential, recognized. They all play into that material mindset. And so it's not just that you don't want to be so concerned about money, it's that you don't want to be so concerned about justifying your identity. Just it's a kind of a rhythmic thing. Stop running on the treadmill of consumption, production, reward, consumption, production, reward. And what happens when you get off that? Well, I don't know what happens, but I know what doesn't happen: consumption, production, and reward. So you're trying to slow your habitual mind frame down and hope, and I think it's likely, that something ignored will grow. And I'd like to say it's good, but it could be traumatic, it could be ambivalent, it could be disruptive. I don't know. But it will be a different kind of progress
Yeah.
that hopefully will be meaningful. And you should buy my book about dreams because I think dreams are really underutilized. They're
No,
not
they are.
easy to use.
They are. No, I love dreams. I tend to write them down. But again, it also involves waking up, and there's pains involved with that. And I haven't gone back and looked at my dreams much, but I'm sure if I did and mapped them onto my waking life diary and stuff, it could interesting things could emerge. But yeah, no, I'm excited to kind of give myself some space and see what happens. And yeah, uh, if we talk in a year from now or whatever, I don't know, maybe we'll have something new to talk about.
You could get, I mean, here's a shamanism. We have overlooked it, but if you want to be more shamanic, then, get with the time that you make for yourself, get yourself a drum
Uh,
and play it. Well, I'm not going to play it, but, listen to it. And here I've got a little kalimba, which is a different kind of music, has some melody to it. And
when you
just,
keep going,
I'm just mindlessly doing this thing.
you're just playing. You're just kind of getting
I'm
lost in
not
it.
paying any attention
You're not
here.
trying to do anything.
Nothing. But you can do that on a drum too, with its polyrhythms. And it has an effect on your mind that is useful, if not just different.
Uh,
And it's a form of meditation. It's a
yeah.
form of distraction. And eventually, you might actually find it productive in some stepped sense. You could become a musician, but you got to watch out for the, production, reward, creation, material cycle, re-engaging. So the banker who was painting had this disaster where his wife walked in and said, "Oh, you're painting. They're very nice." And now he was thinking, "Oh, I've got to make my paintings very nice." Now it's again production, reward. It's like, no, no, make it garbage. Blow your nose, throw it away. Blow your nose, throw it away. And let the water run clear eventually. So I don't know. You got to get out of the mindset of being demanding. At the same time, you want to be discerning because that's how you build things. But you want to build creative, expansive things, not just consumptive, rigid things.
Well, yeah, because even the podcast, that's maybe what in the beginning it was more of just this like blowing my nose and throwing it away, and it kind of became a factory model of like crank them out. This is the release schedule, etc. And then even I got to the point where I started to make the little songs, which were really fun in the beginning, but then it became like, oh crap, I got to make a song today, and then I stopped doing the songs. But what's your like I don't know. You are still producing this podcast, so what's sort of your schedule? Do you set yourself to a rigid rhythm of like I have to do it each week, or is it looser? And what do you think is a better kind of way of doing it?
Well, I haven't produced many podcasts as a host, and I'm not sure I will. I have um, subscribed to Podmatch, which gives me like six podcast hosts a day to whom I can pitch. And I'm picking them discerningly. So maybe one or two I'll pitch to. And I spend a half an hour writing a pitch so that I'm disappointed if they don't accept it, given the time I put in. But I figure that's just my outreach. And that's kind of like scattering the seeds. Most seeds don't germinate. But if you stop scattering them, nothing germinates. So that's just sort of routine. I keep doing that. And I'm looking for a larger audience, but the right audience. And I basically want people to work with people who will work with me. So I'm not going to talk about, intramural basketball or, Republican politics. I'm going to talk about mental health, um, growth, education, um, growing up culture. And I just, have a certain amount of time that I am devoting to that. And my clients come in a very irregular schedule, and I probably spend too much time with them, but they're interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and it pays barely the bills. And the books are just another sort of marketing tool. I'm trying to get out these ideas, both because I think they deserve to be recorded and they would be useful. And although it's hard to write a book, if you're inspired, at least the writing part takes care of itself. There's a lot of editing and formatting, and then, of course, the whole marketing of the book. I'm not very interested in that either. But Amazon has really revolutionized that industry because before Amazon, you were reliant on publishers and agents, both of whom are as dumb as bricks. You know, all a publisher and agent wants to do is to get their book listed at the front counter of your local supermarket. That's what they're aiming for. Trash. So once Amazon came along, you could actually produce things of quality. You couldn't market it very well, but it didn't have to be. It was out there forever. So it's, a mixture.
Yeah. And I know we're wrapping this up, but I got this little question looping in my head. I was gonna Google it or chat GPT it later, but you're the one who started it. So earlier you said, are you autistic? And then I was like, oh, I've never been asked that before. I'm curious why you asked that.
Because
You
while
could
you're
you could offend
talking
me,
to
don't
me,
worry.
could I offend you? Because
Maybe I don't know.
well, listen,
About
listen, I'll
I
tell
don't
you, it's a
know.
simple answer. It's because while you're talking to me, you're looking up.
Mm,
And when I was going through separation with an ex-wife who I thought was borderline, I wanted the court to see a psychological evaluation of her. And in order to do that, I had to sit for a psychological evaluation too. And it's called forensic psychology, psychology for legal purposes. And it's bullshit because they're counterproductive. Psychology is about being individuals, and courts are about being peaceful in community. And so when I sat for the psychological examination, the conclusion that I was told was that I'm autistic because I looked up while I was talking.
oh,
And I thought, first of all, that's cheap. And it's not really why I thought you were autistic, although it triggered that because I
uh,
recalled that was the label
yeah,
I got. But it's also because you think faster than you talk, so that your speech is always slightly catching up to your next thought.
yeah.
And I think that's considered uh, on the spectrum because I think most people are taught not to think so fast. I think they're actually taught to be stupid. I think they're taught not to think at all, frankly. So that anybody who thinks, especially one who thinks fast,
Is autistic?
is branded. Well, all these diagnostic criteria are all about what's normal. They're not about what's right or healthy,
Right, right, right.
right? So they're all about what's the normal curve, the bell curve. You're supposed to be pushed into the middle of the bell curve, and anybody who's out is given a diagnosis. They're given a drug. They're told that they're dysfunctional, and in fact, they have trouble, you know, coordinating with other people who are in the bell curve. So you might tend to believe it. I wouldn't believe it, but I do think it's actually valuable to recognize that you particular think a lot more, probably faster than 95%. I think you are three standard deviations away from the norm, and so am I.
Yeah.
And that has to be your power.
Just lean into that. Don't try to be normal. Just be more
No, well, you try to be
you.
normal in order to get an audience, but
Yeah.
the power is the jet fuel is the thoughts and the chaos that they generate, the contradictions and the questions that arise. Most people are taught not to question, not to engage contradictions, not to enjoy chaos. But, that's what creativity is. You create out of nothing or something, but not an organization. You create organization out of disorganization. So,
That's very helpful. Thanks for pointing that out and recognizing these things. Uh, yeah, and it's very interesting. I can think about my brother, my brother who's homeless. He's been diagnosed with bipolar, and I think you could diagnose him with more than that. At this point, 'cause he's been out there for a few years and talking to himself and seems to be hallucinating and stuff. But he's really good at art, and he's like also really just a really um he doesn't fit into society. That's the problem. He doesn't fit into society and jobs and things like that. But man, he's got on other marks. He's really, really high. It's not what society values. So, it makes me think, ooh, even people like him, you can imagine a world where like he would thrive, but just it's not this world. Uh,
well, maybe he needs a manager of some kind, somebody to
yeah,
take care of the things he's not good at and to channel the things he is good at. Like he sounds like an artist or a lot of artists, or good artists anyway, who produce stuff because they're inspired, not because it sells. I remember once I went to a show, an art show, which was decorative art at the Javits Center in New York City, this huge building the size of 10 football fields. And it was all, dreck, all stuff that you would see at the front checkout counter of your supermarket. And that's the art that sells, the stuff that everybody wants, that they put on the above the bed in the hotel room. It's terrible as art, but it's decorative. It's like wallpaper. And so how do you get beyond that? You know, uh, Van Gogh never sold a painting in his life, and now they're the most expensive paintings in the world. It's sad and pathetic in a sense. So you want to connect that. My father was a friend of Sandy Calder's, and Calder was unusual, like some artists who became famous and wealthy in his lifetime. He wasn't all that normal. There are a lot of great stories about how he lived his life, which it's surprising he managed to get it together at all, but he did. And it's possible. I mean, to his benefit, he had very whimsical, decorative art, because most of the Alexander Calder sculpture you see now is used as decoration. But it was also creative. So he was lucky that he could fit in both worlds, creative and commercial. So that's what your
yeah,
brother needs, you
you
know.
know. I don't want to be his manager, but part of me does. But I got my own little issues.
Sure.
But yeah, he needs somebody. Who any volunteers? Um, yeah. But I know we're kind of backtracking, but this is the chaos of it all. What do you think is the connection between the eye movement and the thinking speed? Why would people with supposed autism be looking up?
I don't really know. I don't think there's much of a theory behind it. So I think the answer is that you're, when you look at somebody in the eyes, you're distracted by them.
Yeah,
You're focused on engagement. And when you're looking at, the corner of the room, it's like closing your eyes. you, although it's not exactly the same as closing your eyes, which you can feel when you do it yourself, it lets you be both there and not there in a way that a person who's playing the social role can't be. A person who's playing the social role, engaging, looking at you, doing the right facial movements of being serious and gentle and engaging, is thinking too much about the social engagement, the social contract, to be whimsical, chaotic, creative, nonsensical, irrelevant, um, offensive. So that's my
Yeah.
theory about disengagement, and that disengagement, yeah, it could go on, in terms of a spectrum, it could go to the level where you're insane, where you're the typical autistic child who is just screaming and banging your head against the wall. But that's
Yeah.
really, it's not fair to equate those two. That's not the necessary progression. You don't
Yeah.
have to go from an artist or creative person to a hysterical wreck. I mean, yeah, I guess you could, but and so that's why I don't really like psychology. I think it's mostly full of shit.
Yeah.
It serves politicians and corporations in ways that aren't very authentic.
But it's interesting the fact that I like to, or I don't like, I tend to look up and look around in the corners and stuff when I talk. It also might explain why I tend to only listen to a podcast rather than watch them on YouTube, or I don't really release the video version or care much for the video version because maybe it's distracting. But again, we're just going to keep talking forever. So, but that's another idea that popped out. Why people listen to podcasts, versus YouTube watchers, and maybe YouTube's more popular because it's more normal people and it's great. But podcasts might be, yeah, they're popular, but maybe slightly more niche because it might attract people who are thinking faster, etc. And thanks for today. This was fun. Yeah, keep in touch.
Yeah, we'll see. Who knows
Yeah,
what's
or
next?
not. Yeah, we'll see what happens next. But yeah, thank you. Thanks.